All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Well, welcome. I'm Matt McCleary. This is my brother, Mike, and there he is.
Hotel, which is called the Élysée Hotel, which is close to the, not the main station.
Is that Stefan Reinfleisch with speaking through a hot mic, I hear? Okay, so it's a pleasure to welcome you to the 26th annual event. This is just a great day that we have together. For those of you who have been here before, it's just a fantastic amount of energy and ideas, and it's just so fun to be sort of together in person at the end of the year, and we're just really happy that you're here. So I want to thank everyone that's been involved with the event, our speakers, our sponsors, all of you who have traveled in from near and far to be with us. The big challenge today is that this is just a one-day event, unlike June. So there are a lot of people to see, and you have to kind of hustle to sort of get it all done. If we can help you in any way with that, please let us know if there's someone that you're trying to find before the day is over. And I wish you a great day. Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to also say welcome, everyone. Been a total pleasure and can't wait for today. I'm also doubling as your DJ today, so I'm going to step out right now and get into the booth, and we'll get this party started.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we started doing like theme songs. So every panel, every speaker has their own personal song that represents whatever they choose. So Mike's in charge of that, among other things. So it's a pleasure to kick it off today with Dr. Alexander Adamou, who is the Vice President of Data Science and Analytics at Veson Nautical, which we're delighted to have him with us today to sort of take us through what is the most investable market opportunities today. So Alexander, welcome. There he is.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that short burst of 1970s European pop music, because you've now got to spend the next 20 minutes listening to a 1970s European shipping analyst. So today, as Matt said, I'm talking about the most investable and also, therefore, divestable shipping sectors. And this is my agenda. I'm going to speak very briefly about vessels value. And then really this whole talk is going to be about two very simple ways that you can leverage valuation data to determine buy-sell signals. So the second part of the talk, I will talk about some fixed age valuations, then about how we can turn those into buy-sell signals. I'm going to say a little bit about whether or not we should adjust for inflation, and then a little bit on discounted cash flows, and finally, how we can start adding a bit of context to these data-driven decision metrics that I'm going to describe. So very briefly about vessels value, I think a lot of people in the room are already familiar with vessels value. We've been around since 2011. We're now part of the Veson Nautical group. And our core product has always been an automated vessel valuation service, but we also support that with a whole host of technical and market data focused on the vessel. So just a few stats there. We value 70,000 ships every day. That's around $2 trillion worth of tonnage. We've observed 130,000 vessel transactions over the years, and we now record 8 different tiers of vessel management and ownership. And that is quite enough of the sales pitch. We'll move on to the meat of the talk, which is fixed age valuations. So firstly, very briefly, automated vessel valuation. What is that? Well, at Vessels Value, our market value estimates are generated by a statistical model that I helped to write back in 2010. They're vessel specific. They're calibrated every day to market data, and they're supported by measurable accuracy. So we backtest our valuations against observed sale prices every day. And what this means is that when you buy a valuation from us, it's independent, it's subjective, and it's also confidential. Our model relies on high quality input data, specifically vessel particulars, sale and purchase transactions, freight earnings, steel prices, and these are collected and validated by teams across our business because, as with every model, garbage in means garbage out. So the core model output is the market value of a real depreciating asset. So the example I've got on the screen at the moment is a VLCC that was built in 2000, so would be 25 years old now. And this is a time series of the daily valuations of that vessel from its launch until today. And what I want to describe is something useful we can do with our model, which is we can remove the depreciation component of the model. And that turns the black line, which is a depreciating asset, into the blue line, which is effectively a hypothetical asset that has always been 0 years old from 2000 onwards. Now, why do this? Well, the main reason is that if you remove depreciation from this model, then any changes that you see in valuation can only have been driven by changes in the market. So it's signals like this that start to answer questions like, where are we in the cycle? And a lot of our clients use fixed stage valuations like these to inform their investment and divestment decisions. Some of the methods they use are to look at statistics of historic value distributions, to fit trend models and project forwards, and to fit more complex stochastic processes and simulate future scenarios. I'm going to focus just on something very simple, which is to look at the statistics of these historical fixed stage value distributions. And from those, we're going to generate some buy-sell signals. So this is the same time series of a 0-year-old VLCC. And what I've marked on there are some very basic statistics. So we've got the minimum value that was observed over the period, the maximum value, the median, which is the dark dashed line, and then also the current value, today's value, which is the red line. And what you can see is that the red line is pretty high up in that distribution of values. It's well above the median and sort of on the way to getting close to the maximum. So we can be a bit more quantitative about that. We can convert this time series into a histogram, which shows us how much time the valuation spent at each price level. And so now you can see that the current value is $138 million, and you can see that most of the time was spent well below that, and a bit of time, mostly in 2008, was spent above that. So we can use this distributional analysis in the following way. We can compute the percentile of the current fixed age value relative to this historical distribution. For this example, it's 91%. So what that means is that the market value of an equivalent asset was lower 91% of the time in history and higher only 9% of the time in history. So this is a very simple context and narrative-free analysis, which is a baseline that you can start to use to build a buy-sell case. And the argument here would be, well, okay, it's only ever been higher 9% of the time, so this is probably an asset that we might consider selling. So that's the 0-year-old VLCC, but obviously we can do this for a whole host of vessels, and that's what I've done here. So this is what I call the heat map. Let's just look at the table on the left. So this is for November 2025, this month. And what I've done here is going down the screen, we've got different vessel types. So I've picked a few tankers, a few bulkers, some containers, and some gas ships. And then going across the top, we've got different fixed ages. So 0 to 25 in 5-year jumps. And all of these, or almost all of them, are very high percentiles. So the current value is extremely high relative to historical observations. And so those are potential sells. And it's a big screen of red, with one exception, which is very old, large LNG carriers. Their values dipped recently in our model, and so they're actually buys now. And for comparison, on the right, I've done the same analysis for November 2000, 5 years ago. And as you can see, we've got more of a sea of green. So these are all low percentiles, and therefore these are buy signals. And very simple analysis, but there's a message here. If all you had done was take some fixed stage valuations, use the percentile function in Excel, and generated this table, you would have bought a load of tonnage in 2000, you would have sold a load of tonnage in 2025, and almost regardless of the employment you'd got for that tonnage, you would have made quite a bit of money. So that's a simple example. Let's now look at a few nuances. So let's talk about inflation. The market value estimates that we produce at VV are in nominal dollars, so the dollars applicable to the time of the valuation. So there is a question, should we adjust those for inflation? Now, there's an argument that when you look at very long time series of asset values in shipping, you don't actually see much asset price inflation. It's very hard to discern. It's certainly a lot lower than conventional consumption-based inflation metrics. So that would be an argument for not adjusting for inflation. However, we are trying to analyze multi-decade time series on a ceteris paribus basis, where typically you would adjust for the purchasing power of your money. And also, and I think this is for me the definitive argument, real returns matter to investors. So I'm of the mind that you should adjust for inflation, and I'm going to do it. What we're going to do is we're going to take the fixed stage 0-year-old VLCC value, the blue line that we had before, and we're going to convert everything to 2025 dollars, today's dollars, using the US Producer Price Index, the PPI. So obviously, the older the value, the higher it becomes. And what you get is this orange line, and we're going to do the same analysis. Again, we're going to look at the maximum, minimum, median, current value, and the histogram of the values. But what you notice immediately on this chart is that we had the current value of the unadjusted for inflation VLCC 0-year-old, and that was pretty high up, a lot higher than the median. After adjusting for inflation, we now find the current value is almost bang on the median. So that's already telling us that this analysis gives you something a little bit different. So same thing again, but we now have something a lot more nuanced. Well, okay, on the right for November 2020, we don't. It's still a sea of green. Everything was pretty much a buy back then. But for today, we have something that is a lot more nuanced. There is now some red and some green on the table. And what we're seeing in particular is that after adjusting for inflation, younger tonnage is more of a buy, and also the small to medium-sized tonnage, especially if you look at the tankers and the bulkers there. So you look at all of the tankers, bulkers, and containers at zero age are actually showing green here, a buy signal. And then if you look at the MRs, the Panamax bulkers and the handy bulkers, again, a lot of green here relative to the sea of red that we had before. So this is indicating that if you care about real returns and if you adjust for inflation, then actually there are some buying opportunities in the market right now, as well as some selling opportunities. So that's the end of the first methodology that I wanted to describe to you today, which was based on the fixed stage valuation time series. Let's now talk about discounted cash flows. It won't have escaped the astute listener that I've said an awful lot about asset values so far, and I haven't said a single word about earnings. So what about income and expenditure? Well, we've got a data set at Vessels Value that can also handle that. We have a discounted cash flow valuation module. And I probably don't need to explain what a discounted cash flow analysis is. I imagine everyone in the room has done one. But very, very simply, you take the projected future cash flows of the asset, both incoming and outgoings, and you use a discount rate to express that as a net present value. And what you can then do is you can take the current market value estimate that Vessel's Value produces, and you can compare that with the income-based DCF value. If the market value is higher than the DCF value, then that is suggesting that the vessel is overvalued relative to its income prospects. And so that would be a sell. If the converse were true, then the vessel would be undervalued relative to its income prospects, and that is potentially a buy. And so a very, very simple indicator would be the market value to income value premium. In other words, how much higher as a percentage is the market value relative to the discounted cash flow value. And we can use that as a buy-sell indicator. The nice thing about this analysis is that you can put your own input data and assumptions in. So if you have a particular view on the market, on future income potential for a vessel, you can put that in. If you have specific employment for a vessel, you can also put that in. The health warning is that the analysis is extremely sensitive to the inputs. So you can basically get any number out that you like by tweaking the inputs to this. So that's an important caveat. So again, I've done something very similar to what I did before, except this time I'm using the market value to discounted cash flow value premium as my buy-sell indicator. So where this is above zero, that means that the market value is higher than the discounted cash flow, and that's something you would be potentially looking to sell. And where it is lower, a negative number, then the converse is true, and that's something that potentially you would be looking to buy and then harvest the income from. So again, when we do this sort of analysis, using the default DCF assumptions that Vessel's Value has in its module, we again get a more nuanced picture. We don't get seas of red or green. We get some interesting peaks and valleys on this landscape. They're slightly different from the signals we were getting when we looked at the inflation adjustment. So here, when you look on an income-based analysis, you actually find that older tonnage is favored, and there is a reason for that. Our DCF model assumes that if you put a vessel into it, it's got at least 5 years left of remaining useful life. So you may want to put an asterisk next to the 25-year-old values because that may not be true for those vessels. So maybe the final row is something to be taken with a pinch of salt. But even so, for 10, 15, 20-year-old VLCCs, for example, this analysis suggests they have a greater earnings potential than is suggested by their market value. On the sell side, younger tonnage, and in particular, a few sectors, I would pick out the Panamax bulkers there. What that's suggesting is that the current prevailing earnings rates and earnings potential for Panamax bulkers are not justified by their current market values. And the same is true for the large LNG carriers and to a lesser extent, the Cape and Handysize bulkers. So that's all for November 2025. Again, in November 2020, you again get a more nuanced analysis than you had before. It's not just a sea of green buys. So that's the second idea I wanted to present to you. And all of this can be done with Vessel's Value data. And then I'm just going to wrap up by talking about how one might go about adding context to this sort of analysis, because even though I am a data scientist and a mathematician by training, I think you've got to be careful with how you use data on its own. So a data-driven analysis provides what I think of as a context-free base case for decision-making. Prices can be high or low for very sound and persistent reasons. And I tend to think of a data-driven sell signal as meaning I need a compelling reason, a compelling narrative to buy this asset. So to get that compelling narrative, you can start laying on layering on additional data to paint a fuller picture. For example, if you're interested in forecasting and in particular sort of macroeconomic and structural forecast, we have a forecast market value that might be of interest to you. If you've got specific employment for your vessel, we can do a market value with charter analysis. If it's important, if ESG ratings are important to you, we have those as well. And just to wrap up, I think it's important to also emphasize the need and utility for expert analysis. We have several analyst desks in our business, as I'm sure all of you do in your businesses, and these are the people who can really turn data into narrative, into commentary, into useful intelligence. And we've recently launched an analytical report product called Maritime Market Watch, which contains a lot of data and associated commentary. It's produced on a weekly basis. I think it's something that could be of interest to many of you. And if it is of interest, do come and speak to me, or my colleague Sophie Sellers will be here all day. And with 25 seconds left to go, all that remains is for me to thank you very much. And I'll hand back to the moderators.